On March 14th, 1853, Levi Strauss stepped off a steamship and onto a dock in San Francisco. At that time, most of California was still wild and untamed, but San Francisco was growing fast. Levi was one of 34,000 immigrants to arrive by ship that year. The city was bustling. Theaters, saloons, and supply stores lined the walkways leading to the waterfront. The air smelled of salt and fish from the ocean. Sounds of ship horns blasted through the streets, and people crowded around the docks to buy everything from food to lumber and steel. Back in New York, Levi had sold clothes and sewing materials with his brothers at J. Strauss & Brother. But now, he set his sights farther, wider. He was coming to California to expand his business. When he arrived, Levi looked like the other businessmen. He stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, had dark hair and a big beard. He wore black pants, a black vest, jacket, and a bow tie, the style most businessmen wore at the time. Levi blended in with the crowd. Why were so many people flocking to San Francisco? Gold had been discovered in California in 1848. People were racing west to try to make their fortune. Levi, though, wasn't one of these gold seekers. Instead, Levi knew gold miners needed sturdy clothes, especially pants, to wear while they were working in the dusty riverbeds. Levi planned to sell them rugged, long-lasting pants, but he didn't know how in demand they would become. Levi's jeans first became very popular with miners, but today, nearly everybody wears them. More than 1 billion pairs of jeans are sold around the world every year. They are still made in a similar style, with the same denim material used so long ago. The pants that Levi Strauss made for working men are still a fashion favorite today. Levi Strauss was born Levi Strauss on February 26, 1829, in Butenheim, Bavaria. His parents were Hirsch and Rebecca Strauss. Leib was the youngest of 7 children. 5 of them were from his father's first marriage. Hirsch was a hard-working door-to-door salesman who sold sewing supplies such as fabric, thread, and buttons. Rebecca stayed at home and took care of the children. The Strauss family lived in a cramped space on the first floor of a house that only had a large living room, a kitchen, and 1 bedroom. The Strauss family was a close and loving one. The children were taught to help and look out for one another. The family was Jewish. Leib's childhood was filled with going to Hebrew school, a school for Jewish children, helping his mother with chores, and playing with his brothers and sisters and cousins who also lived in the same town. Most people in Bavaria were Roman Catholic, but the Strausses were Jewish. Many people there hated Leib's family and other Jewish people just because of their religion. Government rules made life even worse for the Strauss family and all Jewish people there. They were told where they had to live and where they could work. Jewish people were not allowed to vote and had to pay more taxes to the government than non-Jewish citizens. No matter how much money Hirsch made, the government took a lot of it. In 1840, when Leib was 11, his older brother Jonathan moved to New York City. Another older brother, Lippmann, followed in 1841. People from all over Europe were coming to New York at this time. The city was bustling with jobs and opportunities. New York offered lots of different ways for people to make a living. In 1824, the Erie Canal had opened. The canal was a 363-mile waterway that connected the Hudson River to Lake Erie. This made it much easier to get goods to people living in America's Midwest. This meant New York manufacturers could make things such as clothing and furniture and ship them out to the middle of the country. As a result, new New York businesses were popping up every day. And the Strauss brothers wanted to open up a business too. Soon after Lippman joined Jonathan in the United States, they opened a small store in New York City called J. Strauss & Brother. They sold sewing supplies, but unlike their father, they didn't have to travel at all. They had a store, and customers came to them instead. In fact, the Strauss brothers called themselves store princes. They felt rich and royal compared to the way traveling salesmen worked. Back in Bavaria, Loeb saw how difficult the job was for his father, especially carrying his things, which could weigh as much as 70 pounds, in a bag on his back. The work made his father weak and sick. In 1846, when Loeb was 17, Hirsch died from tuberculosis, a disease that affects the lungs. The Strauss family had struggled to make enough money when Hirsch was alive. Now they struggled even more. Loeb was worried about his family, and especially about his mother. He felt like no matter how hard they worked, they could never make ends meet. He wanted to work hard like his father, but Loeb also wanted to work hard in a place where his efforts would be rewarded. At this time, America fever was spreading throughout the Jewish population of Bavaria. Everybody wanted to go to America. They thought they had a much better chance to make money in America than they ever could in Bavaria. They wanted a better life. Thousands of Bavarian Jewish people had already fled their country. The Strauss family decided it was time to move to America too. At this time, Loeb's mother had to ask for permission from the Bavarian government to leave. She couldn't leave without asking them first. In a letter to the government, Rebecca wrote, "My sons who are located in America have landed on their feet, for, according to their letters, they are successfully engaged in business. I have therefore decided to emigrate with my remaining children to seek my goal in that other part of the world." It took more than a year, but the Strauss family was finally granted permission to leave Bavaria. They were coming to America to make better lives for themselves. Loeb, his mother and two of his sisters, Vigela and Mela, set sail to America in the winter of 1848. Loeb was 19 years old. The trip took several weeks. They traveled in the lower decks of the ship. This was the only kind of ticket poor people could afford. But this made the trip very hard. The ocean waves felt rough, especially from the lower decks. Many people suffered seasickness. There was not enough food to eat or water to drink. People in these lower decks, called steerage, never bathed during the voyage. By the end of the trip, the whole ship smelled of filth and rotten food. Some people died of disease during the journey. After many weeks, the ship arrived in New York City. The passengers disembarked on the east side of Manhattan. The docks were loud, crowded, and busy. Ships were arriving from all over the world with immigrants and goods such as fabric, lumber, and coal. People were buying and selling clothes, furniture, and even musical instruments all day and night along the docks. Not far from the docks, new buildings were being built. There were markets filled with meat and cheeses, and brand new stores, like the one Loeb's brother had opened to sell fabric. The Strauss family was tired from their difficult journey, but felt lucky to have reached their new home. The family moved in with Jonathan and Lippman, sharing their small New York apartment called a tenement. Loeb went to work with his brothers at the family store in the same neighborhood as their apartment on the Lower East Side. The three brothers worked long hours buying and selling dry goods, items like coats, pants, hats, buttons, thread, and fabric to make clothes. Loeb was now known by his Hebrew name, Levi. Levi sounded more American, and was easier to pronounce for non-German speaking people who came to shop at the store. Levi's brothers and sisters also changed their names. Jonathan was now called Jonas, and Lippman was now Louis. Vigela was now Fanny, and Mela became known as Mary. Life in New York was better for Levi than it had been in Bavaria. The family was reunited. They had enough to eat. Their neighborhood was called Klein Deutschland, Little Germany, because so many German immigrants had settled there. Unlike in Germany, however, the US government didn't tell Jewish people or other immigrant groups where they could live. They were free. On January 31st, 1853, Levi, who was now almost 24 years old, became an American citizen. He had been in the country for almost 6 years. Now that he was a citizen, Levi was ready to explore the West. Gold had recently been discovered in California, and many people began to travel there with the hope of finding their own fortunes. Levi wanted to go to California too, but it wasn't to dig for gold. Levi and his brothers knew that miners needed sturdy clothes to live and work there. The Strauss brothers saw an opportunity. There were already many fabric stores in New York, but in San Francisco, theirs would be one of only a few. In February 1853, Levi decided to leave New York for California. He was young and single. This made it easier for him to head out on his own. He had a couple of different travel options, but none of them were easy. In the end, Levi chose not to travel overland. He would take a ship, but with a shortcut. Levi boarded a U.S. mail steamship headed south to the country of Panama in Central America. This trip took only about 10 days. Levi then crossed the narrow strip of land called the Isthmus of Panama, which is only about 50 miles wide, to get to the Pacific Ocean. In order to cross the country, Levi took the Panama Railway, then a canoe up the Chagres River. He then rented a mule for the final 20 miles of the journey to Panama City. There, he boarded a steamer to San Francisco. Levi sailed into San Francisco Bay on March 14, 1853. The whole trip took him just over a month. San Francisco is a city located midway along the coast of California. From there, it is about 100 miles inland to the American River, where the first gold had been found. Thanks to the gold rush, more than 100,000 non-native people lived there at the time of Levi's arrival. The city was booming with activity, especially along the docks. The smell of salt water from the bay swirled in the air. Crowds of people loaded and unloaded cargo from ships. Others picked up their mail or greeted passengers who were arriving for the first time. Levi, along with everybody else, depended on the ships to bring everything they needed, from food to clothing to building supplies. San Francisco is a rapidly growing city. It was growing so fast, in fact, it was called an instant city. The year Levi stepped off the ship, the city had 160 hotels, 66 restaurants, 63 bakeries, and 19 banks. Less than 6 years earlier, the same area had been practically empty and desert-like. A couple of weeks after Levi reached San Francisco, he received many boxes from his brothers. They were filled with silk and canvas cloth for Levi to sell. Look out, California. The Strauss family was open for business. With the items his brothers sent him, Levi opened a wholesale dry goods warehouse. Dry goods is a phrase used to describe clothing such as coats, pants, shirts, hats, as well as tools to make clothing such as needles and thread. These are different from other goods such as food and building materials. Levi named the new business Levi Strauss & Company. Like many other businesses, his warehouse was located right near the waterfront. In order to protect it from high tides, it was built on pilings or wood poles. Levi sold fabric, bedding, and sewing supplies to local merchants, who in turn sold them directly to customers. Most people who came to California arrived with as little as possible. Their journey was too hard and long to bring a lot of stuff with them. Instead, they bought the goods when they arrived. Many of Levi's customers were miners, who sometimes paid Levi in gold for his merchandise. Levi's supplies became very popular. At times, Levi ran out of the supplies his brothers sent him before a new shipment arrived. Levi went down to the waterfront and waited for other ships filled with cargo to be delivered. Some of the cargo was sold to the person willing to pay the highest price. Levi knew he would make his money back, plus a little more, once he sold the merchandise to the stores. Most items were more expensive to buy in San Francisco than in New York. People were willing to pay a higher price because things were harder to find, since California was still mostly wilderness. It only became a state in 1850, after the Mexican-American War. As more people arrived to California, some dishonest businessmen sold miners maps with fake places where they could find gold, or digging tools that didn't work or broke easily. Levi, though, was honest. He remembered how unfairly his family had been treated in Bavaria. He didn't want to do that to anyone else. He always tried to make sure his products were of the best quality. Merchants often liked to buy from Levi because he was known to be very trustworthy. He also had a variety of good supplies his brothers sent him from New York, and he never charged too much. This meant Levi had many repeat customers. Soon, he was making a lot of money from his sales. In July 1855, Levi shipped gold back to his brothers in New York for the first time. The gold was worth more than $10,000. It would be worth about $250,000 today. Levi kept sending money the rest of the year. In total, for 1855, Levi sent more than $80,000 back east. $2 million today. Levi's brothers back in New York changed the name of their company from J. Strauss & Brother to J. Strauss Brother and Company. But in California, Levi was building his own name for himself. In 1855, Levi's sister Fanny, her husband David Stern, and their children Jacob and Caroline joined Levi in San Francisco from New York. Levi's business continued to expand, and David could help him run it. Levi's brother Louis moved to San Francisco a year later. Jonas remained in New York selling dry goods as well as sending shipments to Levi in San Francisco. Over the next couple of years, Levi's profits grew and grew. In addition to being reliable, Levi was especially good at making friends. He enjoyed talking and meeting new folks. When Levi first moved west, letters sent by ship or by a stagecoach took several months to arrive. Supplies took even longer, but in April 1860, a mail service called the Pony Express helped Levi get a letter to New York in just 2 weeks, which helped him reach his brother back east and to get supplies shipped more quickly too. Levi spent all of his time working in his business. He didn't have a wife, and instead lived with his sister Fanny and her family. While Levi and David ran the family business, Fanny did everything for her brother, including cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Levi Strauss & Company kept growing. They began selling their goods to stores not just in San Francisco, but all over the West. In local newspapers, Levi was called one of the merchant princes of the Pacific Coast. People around town began to recognize him in the street. When he ate in restaurants, people whispered that Levi Strauss was there. But Levi remained a man of the people. He always asked his employees to call him Levi, not Mr. Strauss. He also helped the San Francisco community anytime he could. Levi had joined a synagogue soon after he arrived. Many Jewish people like Levi had come to California from all over the world to make their fortune. This meant Levi had a ready, built-in community with people who practiced the same faith. Levi received help and advice from more experienced Jewish businessmen who had arrived before him. Levi gave money to help build Emmanuel El Synagogue, a place for Jewish people to worship. It was important for Levi to have a public place for the Jewish people of San Francisco to pray. Levi believed in tzedakah, the Jewish practice of helping people in need. He also joined an organization that supported Jewish widows and their families. He gave money to orphanages and schools in the area. Levi especially liked helping young children. He knew they represented the future of San Francisco, and he wanted his adopted city to prosper. While Levi filled his daily life in California with business and charity work, things were different in other parts of the country. In 1861, the American Civil War broke out. The Civil War was not fought on California's soil, but most of the people there, including Levi, supported the Union and President Abraham Lincoln. During the fighting, Levi's company donated thousands of dollars to the Sanitary Commission, which helped care for sick and wounded Union soldiers. Levi was a proud citizen of the United States. He wanted his country to remain united. This didn't mean he forgot his immigrant roots. Levi was also a member of the California Immigrant Union. This was a group that encouraged immigrants from Europe and the East Coast to move to California. Levi and this group were thrilled when the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869. The cross-country railroad allowed trains to travel from New York to California, which made it easier for people and goods to travel than ever before. Through the years, ships with Levi's gold on them had been lost at sea. One ship was caught in a storm, causing it to sink to the bottom of the ocean. Another time, a ship caught fire, causing most of the passengers aboard to die and all the cargo to be destroyed. Levi and other businessmen knew that trains would be faster, but they also hoped they would be safer. Levi Strauss & Company was now in headquarters that included a huge showroom in San Francisco's business district. Buyers visited 14 to 16 Battery Street and looked at the products before buying them. Levi was now selling men's and women's clothing that was made in a New York factory, then shipped to California. He also sold blankets, fabrics, and children's clothes. In July 1872, Levi received a letter that would change his life forever. The letter was from one of his customers, Jacob Davis, a tailor in Reno, Nevada. Jacob bought denim cloth from Levi to make pants. Denim was a strong cotton fabric, also called serge, made in Nimes, France. In fact, the word denim means from Nimes. Jacob made denim pants for miners in the Reno area. Workers out west had been complaining that their pants did not last. The pockets ripped off easily, especially when they put their tools in them. The seams were not strong enough. In a letter to Levi, Jacob explained how he solved this problem. He put in tiny metal pins called rivets around the pockets and the front seams. This helped keep the pants from ripping. Nobody had ever thought to secure the pockets like this. Davis wrote that these pants were extremely popular because they were so long-lasting. All the miners and workers wanted them. Jacob worked by himself, sewing the pants alone. I found the demand so large that I could not make them up fast enough, he wrote. Jacob needed Levi's help to manufacture more of them quicker. Jacob also explained that he wanted to apply for a patent for the riveted pants. Patent is the legal right of a person to sell an idea for a certain number of years. This means nobody else can use the idea and make money from it. Jacob didn't have the money for the patent application. He knew Levi did. Jacob also knew he could trust Levi not to steal his idea. He asked Levi to help him apply for the patent and then help him make more of these pants. Levi was a smart businessman. He knew a good idea when he saw one. He agreed to help Jacob. On May 20th, 1873, the U.S. Patent Office granted Levi and Jacob patent number 139121 for an improvement in fastening pocket openings on men's work pants. It was on this day that blue jeans were officially born. Jacob Davis was born Jakub Eufus in Riga, Latvia, which was then part of the Russian Empire. In 1854, at the age of 23, he immigrated to New York. When he arrived, he changed his last name to Davis to sound more American. Jacob first worked in New York as a tailor. Silver had been discovered in Nevada in 1859, and Jacob moved there to make clothes for miners. In 1868, another silver discovery was made, and Davis soon owned a tailor shop on the main street in Reno. It was there that he made a pair of riveted pants for a laborer who wanted pockets strong enough to hold his tools. After working with Levi Strauss to secure a patent, Jacob and his family moved to San Francisco. He lived there for the rest of his life, overseeing the manufacture of pants that would change the world. Levi's jeans. Levi opened a factory to make these new pants. It was just a couple blocks from Levi's showroom and offices. Jacob moved to San Francisco to be the plant's head tailor and floor manager. Levi had never made things before. He was used to having finished clothes shipped from New York. This was a new challenge, but Levi was ready. He bought machines and hired 50 sewing machine operators to work them. In addition to the jeans, Levi and Jacob also produced jackets with the riveted pockets. Although the denim fabric first came from France, manufacturers now began making this material in the United States. The material for Levi's jeans came from a plant in Manchester, New Hampshire. The first pairs had 2 front pockets and 1 back pocket. There were buttons around the waist for suspenders to hook. Like he always did, Levi picked the best type of material on the market, XX denim. In the clothing world, the XX meant the material was extra strong. The material Levi used was durable and meant for people with dirty and difficult jobs, like miners. At the time, it was the heaviest clothing fabric milled. The original fabric for Levi's pants was white. Levi could have dyed the pants any color he wanted, but Jacob and Levi chose blue because indigo, the plant used to dye clothes blue, was growing right in California. They used orange thread to stitch the seams. The color matched the rivets. With this orange stitching, Jacob sewed 2 curving V's on the back pocket of each pair of jeans. The V's looked like the wings of an eagle, the national bird of the United States. In fact, Levi's wings are the oldest clothing trademark symbol still in use today. A business's trademark is like a person's signature. Only the business that owns the trademark is allowed to use it. It identifies who they are. Levi's pants were always made to fit big and long on his customers. He knew this material would shrink when it became wet. He never wanted them to become too tight or small after they were washed. The rivets were tricky to apply to the pants. As a result, the overalls required more labor and were more expensive to make than other pants. This meant they had to be sold at a higher price too. Levi's new overalls were sold at about $2 a pair, while other pants were sold for 50 cents. Despite the high price, miners, cowboys, and lumberjacks still wanted them. They were made to last. Levi began advertising his pants in newspapers across the country. The ads read, "To the working man, mechanic, drayman, and miner. Buy Levi Strauss and Company's celebrated, patented riveted duck and denim overalls." Thanks to these advertisements and word of mouth, storekeepers around the West began to buy Levi's pants to resell in other places. Levi's brother Jonas soon opened a manufacturing plant in New York to make these riveted pants and sell them there. Now, these sought-after work pants were much more widely available. By the end of 1873, Levi had sold over 21,000 riveted pants and jackets. A year later, Levi had sold 70,500 pieces of riveted clothing. Other companies tried to sell riveted pants like the ones Levi was selling, but they could not. Levi and Jacob owned the patent, so they were the only ones allowed to sell them for now. On October 11, 1874, an article ran in the New York Times titled, "San Francisco Millionaires." Levi was one of the 50 men on the list, but Levi's company was worth even more. While Levi enjoyed his wealth and jean success, he had to deal with a personal loss. David Stern, his brother-in-law, died on January 2nd, 1874. He was 51. David and Fanny had 7 children. David had been one of Levi's business partners and a good friend for many years. Fanny and David's oldest son Jacob, now 23, took over his father's position in the company. Levi's sister Mary had also died back in New York. Mary and her husband William Saline had helped Levi run the company from the East Coast. After Mary's death, William and his 3 children moved to California to join Levi. In 1875, Fanny and William married each other. Fanny and her 7 children and William with his 3 children all moved in together. Levi and his brother Louis lived with them too. All 14 of them moved to 621 Leavenworth Street in the heart of San Francisco. It was a beautiful mansion where everybody had plenty of space. Levi enjoyed spending time with his nieces and nephews. He treated them like they were his own children, and his business grew even bigger. The company now made a line of denim work shirts in addition to the jeans. They also began selling their clothes all over the world, from Texas and Canada to as far away as France. The pants were comfortable, simple, and most importantly, durable. Workers around the world wanted a pair of Levi's jeans. The more pants Levi sold, the more he had to make. Levi needed to hire workers, a lot of workers, to fill this demand. It wasn't hard to find people to do these jobs. It was just tricky to find the workers Levi wanted. In 1877, Chinese immigrants made up 1/5 of the workforce in California. This meant that for every 100 workers, 20 of them were Chinese, and all these folks were willing to work for lower pay than white people. This made the white workers angry, which resulted in the passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Levi pledged not to hire Chinese immigrants. At the time, this seemed to make good business sense to him. His customers were mostly white workers. He thought they would buy his clothes over others because he didn't hire Chinese immigrants. Levi's decision not to hire Chinese immigrants was an act of discrimination, not treating a group of people fairly based on their race. Levi treated Chinese workers the same way Jewish people had been treated in Bavaria. Even though he didn't hire Chinese workers, Levi still found plenty of people to make his pants. By the early 1880s, he had close to 300 employees, including factory workers, salesmen, and bookkeepers. His sales reached over $2 million. But Levi and Jacob's patent was set to run out in 1890. This meant other companies could soon start selling riveted pants too. Levi wanted to make sure his jeans stood out once other riveted pants appeared in stores. Levi put a brown leather patch on the back of every pair. This patch showed 2 horses facing away from each other. Each horse is tied to the same pair of jeans. The horses pull in the opposite direction, but the jeans refuse to rip. Levi used a picture, not words, on this logo. A lot of his customers could not read. He wanted to make sure everybody understood the message. Levi's jeans are so tough, even powerful animals can't rip them apart. Levi had flyers printed up with this logo for salesmen to carry. Underneath the design it said, "It's no use. They can't be ripped." Levi's pants were now known as the 2-Horse brand. Levi Strauss & Company still uses this logo today. Levi made his nephews, Jacob, Sigmund, Louis, and Abraham, partners in his company in 1890. David and Fanny's sons had grown up working for their uncle. Now they were rising leaders. This also made it clear the nephews would continue to run the company after Levi died. Around the same time, Levi's XX jeans were renamed 501. Although no one is sure why this number 5 was chosen, the numeral 5 always meant the highest quality products to Levi. These 501 jeans became Levi's most popular item. They continue to be a bestseller and are now called Levi's legendary 501 jeans. In 1895, Levi turned 66 years old. He had earned several $1 million over his lifetime, but since he never married and had his own children, his business was his life. "I am a bachelor," he told a reporter. "I don't believe that a man who once forms the habit of being busy can retire and be content. My happiness lies in my routine work." 2 years later, Levi showed how much he still enjoyed working by agreeing to allow his image to appear on a funny advertisement for his company. On the flyer, Levi is shown wearing a pair of the jeans and climbing a fence. A scary-looking dog is biting on the waistband of his jeans. The caption on the flyer reads, "Never rip, never tear. Wish they did now." The especially funny part was that Levi probably never wore a pair of jeans in his life. He was a businessman and always wore suits. But he was willing to laugh at himself. In 1897, Levi donated enough money to fund 28 scholarships at the University of California, Berkeley. The money was awarded to poor students who couldn't afford tuition. He also gave money to a cemetery back in Butenheim, Bavaria. It was the cemetery where his father Hirsch was buried. In 1902, Levi was 73 and spent most of his time with his extended family. On September 26th, he had dinner with his nephew Jacob and his family. Levi went to bed that evening and died in his sleep. The entire city of San Francisco grieved. Flags in the business district flew at half-mast to honor him, and articles in the newspaper praised Levi for his good deeds in the city, his compassion, and his extremely successful business. After a quiet but crowded ceremony at the house on Leavenworth Street, Levi was buried in Hills of Eternity Memorial Park, a Jewish cemetery in nearby Colma. On the day of his funeral, businesses in the city shut down. San Francisco wanted to show respect for one of its most honored and beloved citizens, and Levi loved the city right back. In his will, Levi left thousands of dollars to orphanages and old age homes, and millions to his family. Meanwhile, his 4 nephews continued to run the business as planned. Over the next 4 years, Levi's company grew under his nephew's leadership. But on April 18, 1906, an earthquake hit San Francisco. The Levi Strauss & Company building and its factories were damaged and destroyed, along with the rest of the city. While many of Levi's important papers about the history of the company were destroyed in the earthquake, Levi's nephews got the company up and running again in no time. On April 27th, less than 10 days after the quake, they put an ad in the newspaper reassuring customers that they will positively resume business. The men set up temporary offices in Oakland, just outside of San Francisco, while they rebuilt. Their new headquarters on 98 Battery Street in San Francisco was completed by 1908. By the 1920s, Levi's jeans were the top men's work pants in the western United States. But the company started to notice something. People were calling jeans, any jeans, Levi's, even if Levi's didn't make them. In 1928, the company obtained a trademark for the name Levi's. Then, to make their jeans even more special, they created a red fabric tab with the word Levi's printed on it. They sewed the tab, like a tiny ribbon, on the outside of the right back pocket. Now, everybody knew which jeans were Levi's and which were not. Movies also helped make Levi's popular with everybody, not just workers. In the 1939 movie Stagecoach, an actor named John Wayne wore a pair of 501 jeans. The movie made a big star of John Wayne and also a star of Levi's. In the 1940s, Levi's took advantage of the jeans' rising popularity. They ran an ad that showed a boy in Levi's walking with books in his hand. The words on the ad read, Levi's, right for school. At this time, boys wore dress pants and girls wore dresses to school. They did not wear jeans. But Levi's advertisement helped change this. Kids could look cool like the movie stars, even if they were just going to school. In the decades that followed, cool rebels, played by actors like Marlon Brando in the 1953 movie The Wild One, also began wearing Levi's in films. In 1957, singer Elvis Presley wore jeans in a rock and roll film called Jailhouse Rock. If every teenager before this film didn't want Levi's already, they definitely did now. Levi's began selling a new pair of black jeans called Elvis Presley jeans, and sales exploded. In the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York, and again in the 1984 Games in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia, the U.S. teams wore Levi's jeans, jackets, and cowboy hats during the opening ceremonies. They were America's team wearing America's favorite brand. Millions of people all over the world saw the all-American clothes worn by the U.S. Olympians. Now, even more people wanted to wear the Levi's brand too. Today, Levi's is the world's largest jeans seller. The company has more than 16,000 employees in 110 countries, including countries in Europe and Asia. It's difficult to travel internationally and not find someone wearing a pair of Levi's jeans anywhere you go. In 1999, Time magazine named the 501 jeans the fashion item of the 20th century, and about 4 years later, in 2003, the company celebrated the 130th anniversary of the invention of the blue jeans. In 2014, Levi's Stadium was built in the San Francisco Bay Area. It became the new home field of the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are named after the year of the gold rush, the same time Levi was beginning to build his company, and the team's mascot, Sourdough Sam, wears Levi's jeans at the games. In fact, fans are given rewards such as free snacks when they wear a pair of Levi's to a game, too. Levi Strauss & Company also continues to do philanthropic work across the country. The Levi Strauss Foundation has donated more than $340 million to over 1,000 communities all over the world. The money helps provide access to education and healthcare. The company also works to combat climate change, for immigration rights, and to help stop gun violence. The foundation also helps other people start businesses of their own, just like Levi himself did so long ago. "Giving back is at the core of our business," says Daniel Lee, Executive Director of the Levi Strauss Foundation. "A pillar put into place by our founder, Levi Strauss." The Levi Strauss & Company slogan is, "Quality never goes out of style." The man and his contributions to the world have not gone out of style either. The slogan also proves that Levi's name, after all these years, is just as durable as his jeans.